Is there going to be someone introducing? Or yes, good. Thank you. I've got it here. Right, that's good. Good. Oh, mic problems. Right, here we are.
Good evening, everyone. We are going to start sharp on time because we are being live streamed. So I will start without much ado. My name is Yasmin. I'm from the committee. I was going to say a very warm welcome. It is very warm. And thank you for making the effort to come here on such a warm day. But we have something very special for you tonight. First of all, I'd like to thank all the monastics who have traveled all the way from Newbury Buddhist Monastery on such a hot day. I hope you can hear me. All right. So I'll just quickly introduce everyone here. So starting with Ajahn Nisarano, who's just in front of me. Ajahn Sadharo, who's next to her. Ajahn Sadharo is here at NBM, and Bhante Sunyo, who's come from Western Australia, who's travelled down from Newbury. Aya Sela, Aya Sankappa, Aya Santa, Aya Sunyata. Thank you. So it's wonderful to have monastic nuns and monks here today. Without much ado, I'll hand over to you, Bhante.
All right, thank you.
Do you want to put the program up? So did you want me to go through the program, or it's self-explanatory?
You can. Oh, there it is.
Yep.
Yes.
Okay.
There we are. There's problems.
So we will start with a special chant for the
Chanting.
new year.
Yes, that's good.
Thank you.
So this is, as usual, we do the special chanting, the Purita chanting. These are protective chants, they call them. They protect us, but they actually protect us more if we practice what they're teaching. So that's really the important thing. But they can inspire us too, because it's they are the word of the Buddha. So we can do the chanting, and that's going to be for about 20 minutes, and then we'll have the talk after that. Let's see. There we are. So if you'd like to make your minds peaceful, and you're welcome, as is quite common, to join in if you wish to. Yeah, that's it. Because many people know these chants quite well, actually. So there we are. Samanta Chakavalesu Atra Gachantu Devata Sadang Mang Muni Rajasa Sunantu Saga Mokadang Parita Savana Kalo Ayam Badanta Parita Savana Kalo Ayam Badanta Dhamma Parita Savana Kalo Ayam Badanta Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa Buddhaṃ Saranang Gacchāmi Dhammang saranang gacchami, Sanghang saranang gacchami, Dutiyampi buddhang saranang gacchami, Dutiyampi dhammang saranang gacchami, Dutiyampi sanghang saranang gacchami, Tatiyampi buddhang saranang gacchami, Tatiyampi dhammang saranang gacchami, Tatiyampi sanghang saranang gacchami. Iti piso bhagava arahang samma sambuddho vijacharana sampanno sugato lokavidu anuttaro purissa dhamma sarati sattva deva manusanam buddho bhagavati swakato bhagavata dhammo sanditiko akaliko eipasiko opanaiko Pachatang veditabo vinyuiti supatipanno bhagavato sāvaka sangho ujjupatipanno bhagavato sāvaka sangho nyāyapatipanno Bhagavato Sāvaka Sangho Sāmīci Patipanno Bhagavato Sāvaka Sangho Yadidam Chattari Purisa Yugani Atta Purisa Pugala Esa Bhagavato Sāvaka Sangho Ahuneyo Ahuneyo Dakineyo Anjali Karaniyo Anuttarang Punya Ketan Lokasati Evam me sutang ekang samayang bhagava savatiyam viharati jetavane anatapindikasa arame attako anyatara devata Abhikantaya Ratya Abhikantavanna Kevalakapang Jetavannam Obasetva Yena Bhagavatenupasankami Upasankamitva Bhagavantam Abhivadetva ekamantam atasi ekamantam titako sadevata bhagavantam gataya ajabasi Bahudeva manusacha Mangalani achintayum akankamana sotanam Bruhi mangalam uttamam asevana jabalanam panditanam cha sevana puja cha pujaniyanam etam mangalam uttamam Tirupade Savasocha Ube Jakata Punyata Atasamma Panidicha Etam Mangalam Uttamam Bahusacham Shasi Pancha Vinayo Jasusikito Subhasita Chaya Vacha Etam Mangalam Uttamam Mata Pitu Upatanam Puttadara Sasangaho Anakula Jakamanta Etam Mangalam Uttamam Dhanam Cha Dhammacharya Cha Nyatakanam Cha Sangaho Anavajani Kammani Etam Mangalam Uttamam Arati Virati Papa Manjapana Jasanyamo Appamado Chadammesu Etam Mangalam Uttamam Karavo Chanivato Cha Santuti Chakatanyuta Kalena Dhamma Savanam Etam Mangalam Uttamam Kanti Jaso Vajasata Samananam Chadasanam Kalena Dhamma Sakacha Etam Mangalam Uttamam Tapo cha brahmacharyam cha arya sachanadasanam kalenagam sakriyata etam mangalam uttamam putasaloka dhammehi chittang yasanakampati Asokam virajam kemam etam mangalam uttamam etadisani katwana sambatama parajita sambata sotin kachanti Tante sammangalam uttamanti yang kinchi vitang idavahuram va sage suvayang ratanam parnitam nano samang atitatagatena Idampi bunde ratanam parnitam etena sachena suati hotu kayam viragam amatam parnitam yada jagasakya muni samahito Natena dhammena samati kinchi idampi dhamme ratanam parnitam etena sachena suati hotu yam buddha seto parivanai suchim Samadhimanam tarikam yamahu Samadhina tena samo navijati idam pidam me ratanam parnitam etena sachena suvati hotu ye pugala atta satam pasata Chattari etani yugani honti te dakineya sugata sasawaka ete sudinani mahapalani idam pisange ratanam parnitam etena sachena suvati hotu Yesu payuta manasa dalhena nikamino gotamasa sanami te patipata amatam vigaya Ladhamudhami buddhing bunjamana idam pisangye ratanam parnitam tena sachena suvati hotu kinam puranam nawang nati sambhavang Virata Chita Ayatike Bhavasmi Tekina Bija Avirudhi Chandra Nibanti Dira Yatayam Padipo Idam Pisangye Ratanam Parnitam etena sachena suvati hotu karaniya mata kusalena yam tang santang padang abhisamecha sako ujucha sujucha suvachocha samudu anantimani Santu sako cha subharo cha apakicho cha salahukavuti santindriyo cha nipako cha apagamo kulesu ananugido nachakundang samachare kinchi Navinyu pare upavadeyum Sukhino vakemino hontu sabbe satta Bhavantu sukhitata Yeke chipana bhutati tasava Tavarava anavasesa Tingavanye mahantava Majjhima rasaka anukatula Titavayeva adita Ye chadure vasanti abhidure Buddha va sambhave siva Sambe satta bhavantu sukhitata Naparo parang nikupeta Nati manyeta kata chinang kanchi Vyarozana patiga sanya Nanya manya sadukami cheya Mata yataniyam putam ayusam eka putam anurake evam pisam bhutesu manasam bhavaye aparimanam Metam Sambhalokasmin Manasambhavaye Aparimanam Udang Adochatiriyancha Asambhadam Averam Asapatam Titam Sharam Nisino Va Sayano Va Yavatasa Vigatamido Etam Sating Aditeya Brahmanetam Viharam Idamahu Titincha Anupagamma Silava Dasanena Sampano Kame Suvineya Gedam Nahijatu Gambaseyam Punareti. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. That's it. Go back. Yeah, there we are. So that is the auspicious chanting for the New Year, New Year's Eve. And so this is something, these are very traditional chants, the three main suttas that we chant in Sri Lanka quite a lot. So they're quite powerful, they're powerful teachings for us. And so I think now is the time for the talk. So we'll have a look. Ah, very good. Oh, the countdown, right. So there we are. Oh. Yeah, there we are. Oh. Oh, yeah. So this evening, just to introduce, well, we've already had the introduction, so very good. And of course, it's New Year's Eve, so it's always the change of a new year is a time for reflecting on the year that's been and what we're looking forward to. And this year has been a very tough year for many people, hasn't it? For the world, really, it has been a tough year because of COVID, because of all the restrictions, the lockdowns, and many, many deaths that have occurred worldwide. And still, we have, of course, the future coming. We don't know what will happen with the Omicron variant as well. So it's been a very challenging time for many people, and of course, and also in terms of the economy as well, problems with the economy. And a friend of mine from New York suggested that maybe what we could celebrate tonight is the end of 2021, that it's finally coming to an end, and to look forward to a better, much better 2022. So, but I must admit, from the point of view of many monks and nuns, and also lay practitioners, 2021 hasn't been that terrible for us, because in actual fact we've reduced a lot of the contacts we've had, and also had the involvements have been reduced, and had more time. Many people have had more time to practice Dhamma, to read Dhamma, watch Dhamma, and to meditate. So in some ways, for many people, 2021 hasn't been that bad for them. So you sort of feel guilty when you say that, because most people have had a very difficult time with it, and we are very, very lucky, thanks to the technology team and many throughout the world as well, offering Dhamma on the internet. So in actual fact, I think people have had more exposure this year to Dhamma than they may have had before, and had more time. And one of my friends in Sri Lanka, she said that without Dhamma it would have been very hard to get through this year, because when we have the Dhamma, we can practice the Dhamma, and we have the view, we have an understanding about reality, about the nature of life. And so that's very helpful for us. And also we can develop in the meditation some peace, we can develop compassion, we can develop loving kindness. So, and it makes one think, doesn't it, that many people don't have this. They don't have the Dhamma to reflect on, to make sense of what's happening in our lives, what's happening on the planet now. So the theme of this talk is really, what are the lessons we've learned from COVID-19, from these COVID times? And I think everybody has probably come away with a different lesson. I should imagine many people have got very many different lessons. But I think for all of us, it's been pretty much a reality check, a very tough reality check, because we've had to confront a lot of sickness and death, maybe not immediately in our experience, but at least through the news. And also for many people too, being isolated, having to have the restrictions of a lockdown, that's quite a challenge for them. As I say, for many practitioners and meditators, it's an opportunity. It's not a challenge. But of course, what we're being taught by COVID-19 is really the classic teachings of the Buddha, the nature of reality. And of course, the main teaching, of course, when we think of the death, sickness, is a teaching the Buddha gives on impermanence. This is the nature of reality, that there is impermanence. And there is that everything is subject to change. But we've got it very much on very full experience of it, a very focused experience of it. And it's challenged us because most of the time, if we deal with sickness and death, it's usually not on such a scale as this. And also it's brought with it this quality of anicca, this impermanence, is uncertainty and unpredictability, which really has people on edge quite a lot of the time. And I think one of the main themes I've seen from 2021 is expect the unexpected. This is what impermanence is teaching us, to expect the unexpected. And also it's been teaching us this year very much, hasn't it, about unsatisfactoriness. We've really found that things are not the way we like. They're not what we're used to. We often hear people saying, when it goes back to normal. And this is because we can't do the things we want to do. We can't visit those that we're close to. We can't go on holidays quite often. But like anicca, impermanence, when we contemplate, when we reflect on unsatisfactoriness, the effect that it can have, if it goes deeply, is to let go, to accept what's happening. And of course, the last aspect, there's 3 characteristics, isn't it, is that it's this COVID-19 has taught us a lesson about it's not personal, it's non-self, that we aren't the owners of these bodies and minds that we think we are. Nature owns them, and this is what we're seeing at the moment. And we can't necessarily control things as we would like to, but we can choose how we deal with it, whether we deal with it in a positive way or a negative way, whether it's a lesson for us or a tragedy. And so there's so many teachings that we are getting. I mean, everything really is teaching us, and this is something that Ajahn taught and it's something you can see if we're looking at life from the point of view of what we can learn from it, what can we understand from it, then everything that we experience, the good things and the not so good things, are teaching us about patience and tolerance, teaching us about the power of views. We're seeing the power of views because of COVID. There are many different conflicting views over vaccinations, over restrictions, civil liberties, everything. And it's also teaching us, I hope, kindness and compassion. And I think that's come up, and equanimity, that's come up for many people. So, but this evening I'd like to focus on, the aspect that I'd like to focus on is acceptance or equanimity. That's my translation for equanimity. Because every year usually we have a theme for the New Year's Eve. Every year it's some positive emotion we can develop, some positive emotion we can bring to the new year. And that's so important that we develop, the positive, the wholesome in our lives and reduce the negative, unwholesome. And so this is why I thought of acceptance this evening, because very much so, we have to accept a lot of the things that are happening. We cannot change them necessarily at this time. And so equanimity or acceptance is an emotion that is very useful to focus on. I think it is something very appropriate for these times, where everything sometimes seems out of control, doesn't it? And when you just think, but every so often, don't we think, oh, now it's just turning the corner. And then a change occurs, like right now with Omicron. We're thinking, it's all going back to normal. And now we're not sure. So this is very important to develop these positive emotions. And as I said, acceptance is actually an emotion. It's a feeling, and that comes from this equanimity. And it's a sort of unconditional acceptance. And it's one of the four supreme emotions. This is what Ayakema called them, the Brahma Viharas. And of course that's metta, kindness or loving kindness, friendliness I like. And of course karuna, which is compassion, and mudita, which is happy, joy for others' success and good qualities, and equanimity, which I translate more like as acceptance. The word for equanimity is upekkha. Our chief nun at the monastery, that's her name. She should be giving this talk. But it literally means looking on. But it's looking on with wisdom, from wisdom actually. It's coming from wisdom. Looking on from wisdom with kindness and warmth. So it's a feeling of allowing things to be, a feeling of making peace with what we're experiencing. And that's always easy when it's pleasant. But it's not so easy when it's unpleasant, as it is now, isn't it, with COVID-19. This is not the way we thought it would be at the New Year's Eve on 2021. But also, equanimity has a sense of balance in it as well, and a feeling of letting be. And so it's this very important quality that has patience in it too, and also forgiveness as well, and compassion. And it's very important to realise that it comes from wisdom, understanding how things are. I always say, when we understand a situation, sometimes we can get very upset about situations, I have, but when I've understood what's going on, wow, it's not a problem at all. It drops away. So we can say that what isn't acceptance, so what isn't acceptance? And it's not, because quite commonly people think it's indifference or coldness. You're looking on like a surgeon or something like that. No, it's not an indifference or coldness. It's not coming from controlling, and it's not coming from judging. That's very important, actually. And it's not rejecting ourselves, others, situations, and not rejecting life. So these four supreme emotions are a very important aspect of the path. And you can see them, working together. Usually when the Buddha taught the four supreme emotions, or the four divine abidings, the Brahmaviharas, he taught them together. And so you can see them in, say, in a parent's love. You can see how they work. That a parent, for instance, will have kindness and friendliness for their children, be there for them, have compassion for when they have difficult times, and also be happy, really joyful for their successes or very good qualities they develop. But also, many parents feel this is quite a big part, acceptance too, that their children will have their own life, their own, and discover things in their own way. So I know some people will say, well, if you accept everything, does that mean you can't change things? And of course that's not the case. And it reminded me of my mother used to, when I was young, my mother used to have a poster in the toilet. This is very common, probably still is very common. And she had this Serenity Prayer, it was called. And I thought, there's a lot of wisdom in this one. And it said, may I have the serenity to accept what I cannot change, the courage to change what I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. That's pretty good, really. It's a very wise saying, because often we don't realise what we can't change. And that's a big suffering in our lives. And if you think of, say, for instance, COVID-19, there's a lot of things we can't change with it. But people try, and it gives them a lot of suffering. But what can't we change? And the present moment is one thing we can't change. It's here, it's arrived. So there's no way we can re-present the moment. We can't change others. Everybody tries that, don't they? But they realise it's impossible. And the other thing we can't change is nature. And of course this is the basic conditions that apply in existence. And of course, again, these three characteristics: impermanence, and we see it in old age, sickness and death; unsatisfactoriness, or dukkha, and we see that life is a process that's fed by cause and effect, non-self. The other thing we can't change, usually people say, is taxes, and you usually have taxes and death together. Those things you can't change. But what can we change is, of course, the future by living the present moment well. If we live the present moment well, then the future will be of a similar nature. Because the essence, isn't it, of the Buddha's teaching is this developing the causes for these things to happen, for the future to be positive. And we can do this by accepting things as they are now, but it doesn't mean that they can't change. Change is always happening. But we want it to go to the positive. And we can change ourselves by developing causes for changes. Not just wishful thinking. We have to develop those qualities that will bring change for us. And of course we can bring about change in society too, particularly if we do it in a really positive way. And I think it's a very good summary of what I'm talking about actually, which is from Byron Katie. And she mentions the three kinds of business. And I think it's good, easy to remember actually. There's nature's business, our business, and others' business. Pretty good summary actually. And the only one we can take care of is our business. The others we can't change. We can influence. Of course, we influence other people by the qualities we develop, and that can bring about change for them. But we can't change them directly. So how do we develop acceptance, this quality of acceptance? And of course, as I mentioned, it comes from understanding how things are, and that they come about because of karma, actions of body, speech and mind that have conditioned the way we are. They shape us, and they make us who we are now, keeping in mind that who we are now won't be necessarily who we are tomorrow or the day after. It's an ongoing work. So understanding this changes a lot, the understanding karma. And I know from my own experience, I'm sure all of you here have had this experience of where we've experienced a situation and we have a view about this situation. And it may be quite negative, actually. And this happened to me quite a bit in Sri Lanka, where I'd misunderstand what people told me because of the language. and then I'd find out why they did something or what was going on, and it would change everything. And you could really accept, and what happens, you accept and then it falls away, you let go. So it's the essence of acceptance or equanimity or upekkha is this karma. And it's always good to reflect on what the Buddha said about karma, that we are, all of us, the owners, each of us, the owners of our own karma, of body, speech and mind. And for some people, I think, when they hear body, speech and mind, it doesn't really hit home that it's the mind that really shapes our experience of the world, how we see the world, how we see ourselves, how we see others. And you realise when you know, from our contact with each other, how different our view of the world can be. And it's coming from this mind that's being conditioned by our own actions, by our own speech, but particularly by the mind, and also other influences, which I'll mention in a minute. And also, when we are the owners of our actions, we are responsible, aren't we, for what we do, say, and think. So it puts the onus on us, and we are the heirs of our action, and so that implies we get the results of what we do, say, and think. In Australia, we have that idea of what comes around, goes around, and this is very much what this is pointing to, that what we're creating, actually, our world, as it were, out of these results that come about. And we are born from our actions, so they shape our personalities, and this is the actions of body, speech, and particularly the mind again. And our actions are like our relatives, so they're very close to us, and they're like our shelter. They can be a refuge, but they can also be a torment, actually. And whatever actions we shall do, whether for good or bad, we will be the heirs. And of course, we're into this mix of our actions of body, speech and mind. There are so many influences and conditioning aspects. Our parents, have a big influence on us. We would say in Buddhism, our past life too. And I think many parents will say when their children are born that they have a character that they're aware of already, at a very young age. Of course, our teachers, major influences in our lives, and our religious and spiritual beliefs too. Of course, all the friends we have, that they influence us very much. And the society we live in, it's it's wonderful to live in a Buddhist society, like I spent almost 14 years in a Buddhist society, and live in Australia. Different ways of looking at things, different influences that you see. And the time that we live in too has a big effect on shaping us, and the media too. So we can see that there are a lot of differences that we have, but there's so much we have in common. I think this is, human beings have a lot in common. We have anicca, dukkha and anatta for sure. And but we are sort of a unique combination of qualities. And so it's really, when we look at each other, often we judge and compare, don't we? But actually what we're judging and comparing are not like things. I say in Australia we have this saying, like cheese and chalk. We're not. So it's not possible to really judge and compare ourselves to others. And I like what Ajahn Chah said it's a book of his called A Tree in the Forest, and he said, the essence of our practice is to watch intention and examine the mind. You must have wisdom. Don't discriminate. Don't be upset with others if they are different. Would you get upset at a small and crooked tree in the forest for not being tall and straight? like some of the others. That would be silly. Don't judge other people. There are all varieties. No need to carry the burden of wishing to change them all. If you want to change anything, change your ignorance to wisdom. That's a wonderful saying, isn't it? Wonderful saying. So that's what equanimity, what this acceptance is about, seeing these differences and being able to accept them, the variety, realising that the reason that people are as they are is because of their past, their conditioning, the influences they have, the views they have. This can make a big difference. And one of the experiences that I had some years ago when I was living in Sri Lanka, in fact living in a cave, which I lived in for 8 years, was I was doing a retreat, and it was a very strong sort of feeling or insight came, and it was that everything belongs. It was really quite striking for me. Everything belongs. And it included the things that I liked, I disliked, the things that were perfect in my estimation or were imperfect, they're all the same. And whether they were pleasant or unpleasant, everything belongs. It was a very unifying experience, a very peaceful experience too. But it brought this sense of acceptance too, that accepting everything as it is, and not judging or discriminating, not comparing. And of course, when you have a mind state like that, it's leading towards the mind being one, actually, as it were, because we're seeing oneness outside. But it brings peace too. Because when we can accept ourselves, when we can accept others, and when we can accept life as it is, situations as they are, then we come to peace with them. Then we stop fighting with them. So I'd just like to just briefly give a taste of that experience that I had, which is to me the essence of acceptance. When you feel like everything belongs, it's accepting the situation as it is at that time, at that moment. So I'd like you, if you'd like to join in, to close your eyes and to just come into the present moment for a very short time, just to get this taste of everything belongs. And we can let go of the past and future and leave them outside with our shoes. And just feel how the body is, and relax the body from head to toe. And we can bring to mind everything belongs in the present moment. Everything belongs in the present moment, whether it's perfect or imperfect. You don't have to rearrange the present moment or improve on it or judge it. And everything belongs in the present moment, whether it's pleasant or unpleasant or neither. Just aware of whatever we're experiencing with this feeling of everything belongs. And we can notice that perhaps we can notice a feeling that comes up when we have this idea, everything belongs. And we can, as we breathe in, we can breathe in, everything belongs in this moment. And as we breathe out, we can be aware of everything belongs in this moment. And we can make the aspiration to remember to develop this acceptance, accepting ourselves, others, life as they are, and to anchor this feeling of everything belongs in our heart and mind. So we can just open our eyes, and that was just a little bit of a taste of, because we'll have a meditation after this actually, later this evening. So I wonder how that was for you, if you were able to get a feeling for, when we have that feeling of everything belongs, it opens the mind up. You know, we don't have to judge, we don't have to compare anything. So I hope it gave you that feeling of everything belongs. And one of the areas that we find most hard, isn't it, to accept? What do you think is the hardest area to accept? Death, yes, death is very hard to accept, yes. I think many people find that hard. But I was thinking more of accepting ourselves. Because sometimes we might be a bit more accepting of other people, but of ourselves we can be quite critical and quite unaccepting. So how do we accept ourselves with all our shortcomings? And I know I had another experience in Sri Lanka that I thought was it taught me a lot actually. It taught me a lot. And that was when I was living in that cave, but didn't happen at that cave actually. And I was feeling a bit negative about myself, a bit down on myself actually, and judging myself. And I was of course, where the cave is in a forest, and where I was, wasn't at the cave, but it was also in the forest. And then I saw this beautiful wild chicken on a branch. And in Sri Lanka, they have these wild chickens. They call them wali kukala. And it's a national emblem of Sri Lanka. But it's a beautiful bird. It's very colourful. It's got these gold, orange, black and blue feathers. It looks a bit like a bantam chicken, but bigger. That's what I think anyway. And they're usually very shy. And but they're not the same as ordinary chickens, of course. And this wild chicken just flew down from this branch, but the way it flew down, and this is coming from my perception actually with that mind state, was how totally present this wild chicken was, and how totally at ease, and this feeling of totally belonging as well. And it was just totally at home, no problem at all. And it gave me this sense that everything is a part of life. Whether we judge some things being more special than others, but everything is contributing to life, just as it is. And what I learned from this experience was that made me realise there's no need to judge myself, no need to compare with anybody else or what I think I should be achieving. No need to be different. No need to be better, no need to compare oneself with others, no need to justify one's existence. Just complete acceptance. And it is enough just to be oneself, myself actually. And the feeling came, what a relief. And I thought this was a great lesson, just in presence really of this chicken. Of course my perception, somebody else seeing it may not have that perception, but it just seemed so at home and just part of it, of everything. So I think this is something that we can apply to ourselves and realise that we don't have to justify our existence. We don't have to be super useful, super capable, or need to be special. This is one of the things. There's big suffering for people. They have to be special, have to be different, and we have to be intelligent or clever or talented in some respect, or appreciated, admired, all those things. We don't have to be any of these things because we are all part of life in this present moment just as it is, just like that chicken, that wild chicken in Sri Lanka. So just being ourselves is our gift to this moment, just as we are. And one of the qualities that I find very inspiring, actually, it's one of the qualities I find very inspiring about Ajahn Brahm, is just being natural. And being natural, and I'd consider that sort of real, really. Just nothing, don't have to be anything special, just being natural, just being yourself. So this can teach us to accept ourselves without any conditions, So this for me was quite a teaching in how to accept myself, realising that we are just all we're all part of this, and we're an integral part, really. Everything is playing its part in this moment as it is. And one of the other things that is hard to accept, and I touched on it before, is that it's hard to accept when things are unsatisfactory, when they're not the way we want. And how do we deal with that? And of course this is the teaching of COVID-19 writ large, actually. And it points to the fact that life is untidy. It's not the way we want it to be often. Sometimes it is, isn't it? But the thing you notice with that, then it changes. Either what we consider to be perfect changes, or the thing that's perfect, the person that's perfect, they change. So this is part of how this unsatisfactoriness unfolds. And of course it's the Buddhist teaching on dukkha. And of course sometimes, as I mentioned, the unsatisfactoriness can be ourselves, it can be others, or life situations. I saw a wonderful sign when I used to go on alms round. I used to go on alms round down to Carnegie, just down the road here from the Buddhist Centre when I was staying here. These days, it's not so possible with COVID. And one of the shops had this sign, "Imperfection is beautiful." And I thought, would I shop at a shop like that? But it's actually true. I mean, that's how life is. It is imperfect. And due to change, everything will change from whether, even if it is perfect, it will change to something that is not to our liking. So I'd like to just ask, what lessons have we learned from COVID-19? Maybe you've learned some of these lessons, maybe you've reflected on some of these aspects of Dhamma. Because when we reflect on life from the point of view of Dhamma, this is Dhamma Nupassana, really, reflecting on how things are in a more universal situation. And we can develop wisdom from that into the nature of life, that nothing lasts, that change, it's uncertain, that it's unsatisfactory and imperfect. And it's not personal, it's a process. So I hope that we can learn to accept ourselves and others and life as it is. And also to keep in mind what I started with. Everything is teaching us, as Ajahn Chah said, But he had a condition. He said, but, there's always a but, isn't there? Life's like that. But we have to be good students to actually learn from our experience. And this is what Dhamma helps us do, actually. Because we develop the mind through meditation, we develop the mind through our practice of ethical behaviour, of giving, we develop the mind by reflecting on life. So everything is teaching us, but we have to be a good student. And a very important ingredient is too, it helps very much to hear the Buddha's teaching. We're so lucky to have that teaching that points us at the nature of reality so that we can investigate it, not to take it on faith to a certain extent, enough to actually investigate it, to look into it, and then to penetrate it for ourselves, see if it's really true for us. Because in the end, of course, it has to be our direct experience. What the Buddha saw is his experience, his wisdom. So what we see, what we develop, will become our wisdom and our insight. And let's face it, we have got plenty of opportunity with COVID-19. It's giving us a lot of opportunity to really reflect on life. And we have, to a certain extent, much more time to reflect on it because of things like lockdowns and so on, and isolating and social distancing, all these sorts of things. So it's a very good opportunity to learn from what we're experiencing due to COVID-19. So thank you very much for that, and perhaps if anyone has any questions about that talk about acceptance or equanimity or upekkha. If anybody's got any questions, comments or complaints, you don't accept it.
Yes, Ajahn, we've got two questions online.
Thank you.
One of them is a request.
Yes.
From Germany.
Yeah.
We lost one of our best friends this week, unexpectedly, due to cancer.
Oh, right. Okay.
We are all very sad. Can you please put out a blessing for him and wish him well? His name is Gerard.
Gerard, right.
Gerald.
All right. We will, at the end of the evening, at 12 o'clock our time here in Melbourne, we do the sharing of merit, or dedicating a merit to those that have passed away. And this is dedicating all the goodness that we have done in the past. Often we do it by offering things to the Sangha, but any goodness that we do. And so that can be dedicated to Gerard as an offering to him. There's something that can bring happiness to him, actually, if he can be aware that people are thinking of remembering him and wishing him well, and are doing things, good things in his name, in his memory. So this can be very useful, and it's very, very useful for the living, actually. It's one of the very positive aspects of dedicating merit, is that it really supports the person who's doing it, because often people feel, what can I do for someone who's passed away? You know, my grandfather, my partner, my brother, my sister, my child. And of course this is something they can do, and it is a sort of a healing thing for a person if they feel they can do something for somebody who's been very dear to them and has passed away. And so this is very, very, very useful thing to do. Yeah, we can do that for Gerald.
Yes.
Gerard.
Thank you, Ajahn.
Thank you.
Second question, this is from Sweden.
Oh.
So we must be in the right time zone for Europe, because we don't get these questions from Europe in the morning.
Yeah.
I have bugs in my plants that are killing them from the roots. From the roots. To save them, I have to kill the pests. I feel really bad, and I don't want to.
Yeah.
And I don't want to lose all the plants.
Yes,
Is there anything you can say about that?
Yes, I think this is a common dilemma, actually, because of course the essence of Buddhism is not harming And of course the first precept of the 5 precepts is not intentionally killing a living being. Of course, sometimes we will, accidentally kill a living being. But this is intentionally killing a living being. And it's very interesting, we have the same dilemma at the monastery. It's life, isn't it, really? We have a nice Bodhi tree. This is a tree that it's not the actual tree that the Buddha was enlightened under, but the same species. It may be related, actually. And it has got spider mites, which are killing the actual tree. And so they've put it outside, and one of the monks is putting vinegar on it to persuade the spider mites to go away. And so we do what we can do, to try and not kill them. But of course, in the end, we have to make a decision about that, whether we will actually kill these spider mites or whatever it is these plants have. But if it is the best if we can avoid killing living beings, because every living being, like ourselves, wants to live. It doesn't want to die. Eventually it will die, but if we can avoid it, that's a very good thing to do. So it's always an ethical dilemma, isn't it, how we can manage this. We do it as best as we can in this imperfect world. For one thing, like sweeping up ants and taking them outside, that is possible. All these things are possible. And to look for ways that we can actually, for instance, rid the tree of the pests that are attacking it. For them, it's food, and the plants, and find a way that can drive them away without necessarily killing them. It would be the ideal, and sometimes we can do that. I know in the tropics where I lived, there are so many insects, life is full of them. And I would come back to my hut and find an invasion of ants and spend days sweeping them out. And you do your best when you sweep them out too. But sometimes when you're sweeping them out, they'll get killed because, just sweeping them out. They'd be in their bed, they'd be in everywhere. And so you just sweep them out and do your best. You don't intend to harm them. And certainly I didn't have that intention, just to sweep them out or take them away, further away from the actual hut that I was living in, the cave I was living in. So we just do the best we can, I think, and that try the deterrence if possible. That's great. There's some things that actually, are repellents. Call them repellents, and we have these insect repellents. So maybe you can try some of those on the plants and see if it repels them. Yeah. But in the end, we all have to make our own decision about that. Yeah. Thank you. Thanks very much. That's from Sweden.
Sweden.
Yeah.
There's one more question online, Ajahn. We've just got a couple of minutes to go. Are you okay to take that question?
Yeah, certainly.
Okay. How do we have the wisdom to distinguish when to accept and when to change?
How do we have the wisdom to between when we accept and when to change? Yes, that's the essence of that Serenity Prayer that I mentioned. May I have the serenity to accept what I can't change, and change and the courage to change what I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. It's exactly the point. And so we look at the things that we can't change, and as I mentioned, that summary was very good. We can't change nature as the way it is, the nature of things, and we can't change others, but we can change and influence ourselves. We can't change the present moment that's already arrived. It's just as it is, and so that is established. But we can change how we regard what we're experiencing, and that will influence the future. So I think when you have a look at what you can't change, if you realise you can't change things, then this is the time for acceptance. And it does take quite a bit of wisdom because, you know, when things are not the way we want, we often do try to change them, and it doesn't necessarily work, and then eventually we'll come to acceptance out of that experience. We learn, don't we? We learn from our experience. And I think anybody that's been in a relationship knows changing the other person. Dead loss. Don't try it, don't go there. But everybody tries. And when they do try, they find out from their own experience, this is not the way to do it. But of course we can influence other people to change, but it's more by inspiring, more by an example, not by telling them what they should do, how they should be, but more by one's own example. And that can influence people. We can inspire people in that way. So I think this is a good question to be able to differentiate between what we can change and what we can't change, and focus on the one thing that we often don't focus on, ourselves. We change, then the world that we experience, the relationships we're in, they can change actually. That's where a lot of the change can be driven from, is by the work we can do on ourselves, our own understanding of ourselves, other people. And a big thing that can change in a relationship, I've seen it in my own experience actually too, is accepting the other person. Sometimes when we don't accept the other person, that creates a block in terms of them being able to move on, be different, change their own way. So when we accept another person, that can change the dynamics in a relationship big time. So I hope that helps. It's not an easy thing to discriminate, to work out. Yeah. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ajahn. There is one more question.
Oh,
We're
right.
past 9:40.
Yeah. Just one, yeah, all right.
right,
It's
okay.
just very brief, yeah.
So this one is, if we accept everything as it is, how do we actually go about changing things that we don't have control over? Is non-acceptance an impulse to change parts of our lives that need changing?
Right. If we don't have control over something, then that's something we can't change it perhaps, but we can change our attitude towards it, the way we regard it, the way we respond to it. That's what I would say in that case. And what was the second part of that?
Is non-acceptance an impulse to change parts of our lives that need changing?
Right. Is non-acceptance. It depends on where we're coming from, really. If it's coming from a negative or a defilement, an unwholesome state of mind, from fault-finding, criticising, comparing, this sort of non-acceptance is not very helpful. In fact, I would say if we don't accept ourselves, we can't really change the qualities that we have. That non-acceptance will be a block for us. I think it will be a stumbling block. If we can really accept ourselves as we are, then change is possible. Then we're open-hearted towards ourselves and we can change. But I think, we're so used to fault-finding and criticising and all this stuff that it comes very naturally, actually. It's so conditioned that we can fault find with ourselves to the nth degree, and we should be like this. And many people will be making New Year's resolutions tonight based on these faults that they've got to fix. And will they fix them? I don't think so. I think 1 week's time they'll be, who cares? Doesn't matter, But if they can really accept themselves, now I think that's because acceptance has this quality of friendliness, of kindness, of openness, and when we are like that, then change can happen. But when there's all this fault finding going on and criticising, it doesn't help that much. help at all, actually. So I hope that was useful, and thank you very much. Now it's, I think, the time for... a very, very important time. Not for you, not for us, though. And this is going to be the supper. I think it's supper. So I'd like to invite you for a supper for 9:40 to 10:30. So that's about 40 minutes, isn't it? So where is the supper? Is it? It's over next door, all right. To proceed. Yes, monastics, you're all invited to go over next door, and outside there will be some supper, so that's great. And we'll meet back in here at 10:30, is that right?
I think I don't have the program in front
I've got
of me.
the
Ajahn.
program.
Yeah.
It says circumambulation at 10:30, and when we come back, we can talk. I'll mention what a circumambulation is. Sounds very sweet. Yes, they've got them over there. Oh, right, they're over there, are they? They've got the flowers, tea lights, and incense sticks will be given to each participant. They must be over there. These will be placed on the platform of the Buddha statue outside at the end of the circumambulation. So we get a bit of exercise as well. So, all right, so please have a nice supper and spend time with each other too. Thank you very much. And accept each other. Thank you.
And if everyone can just wait until the Sangha exits the room before leaving.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And for those who wish to, we can just pay respects to the Buddha, Dhamma and Sangha as we go. Oh, that's it. We'll put this back on.